there's so much out there. I've had lots of interesting situations, some of them positive, actually many that are positive, and some that were quite disastrous actually. I think one of the things that I would like to share with new teachers is this. As you go into your classroom, it's nice to kind of have a framework that works for you in terms of your teaching. Because I found that I'm a rather creative person. I like addressing problems that I see in the classroom. But this actually worked to my disadvantage as an early teacher. Because what would happen is I would constantly change as a result of, I would get new feedback. So I would have these really, really tight almost action research cycles that would like go a week. And so in terms of routines and things like that, it was very, very confusing for students. But after a year, I realized, okay, I kind of understand what my routines are, what I expect. And the more clear I got about that, the less guesswork there was for the students, the more consistency there was. And that was really, really a turning point for the students. And as you kind of figure out, well, what's your bottom line? What are your routines? What's the platform upon which all of your teaching rests? And once you figure that out, then everything else becomes easier. If you're constantly coming up with new routines for your classroom, or you have no routines, your teaching can, shift based on whether the students are settled or not. Or if they're having good days or not. But when you have those routines and the students know, okay, first I do this, then I do this, then I do that, they know that the class won't last forever. It's not going to be you talking forever. But they'll have an opportunity to like, okay, I know I'm going to do this. It's only for a little bit. I can handle that. And then I'm going to transition to another part of the lesson. And once you have that routine set up, and the students understand that, and you are very clear as to how that routine is going to work and say, okay, we're having a tough day. We need to move on to our next bit. Let's just put a pin in this. We'll address it tomorrow. Let's move on. And once you have that routine, then your teaching flows a bit better. You figure out your planning. Oh, okay, this is how I do my warm-up. This is how I introduce information. These are some of the types of questions that I ask. This is the format as to when I expect questions to be answered and how I want the students to respond. These little, routines that you have in the class, once you become very consistent with them, it's super easy and you get tremendous results. So as a starting teacher, it's trying to figure out, well, what worked for you and how are you going to do these things, and kind of putting a framework to your lesson. That's really, really helpful. One of the things that I really liked was just breaking your lesson into, I would say, about 3 sections. First, it's the introduction of the information. What you're doing is you're priming the students. You're kind of setting, this is what we're going to be working on today. Then you have some sort of shared practice, and this is mainly primary, where you demonstrate, but also have the students involved, and you allow them a bit more autonomy by asking questions and having them help you. So the first one is like, I do, you watch. The second one is, I do, you help. And then you can do a third section where you do, you do, I help you. And then there's finally independent practice where the students do it on their own. So having that format for my lessons really, really helped me, because I knew, okay, I need to provide these students with information. This is the English that we're going to be working on. This is what it means. And then I would present that. And the second part is, okay, well, what are we going to be practicing? Within that whole chunk, there's probably one feature that I want to address within that lesson. Okay, so what is that? Let's put that here. How do I ask questions? What do I want the students to do in terms of figuring out how this feature works? Then I put that in for kind of my shared practice. Then how am I going to design an activity for the students to do so that I can help them or correct, certain problem spots? And all it is like, I'm introducing something and I want you to practice it. And it's really, really simple. But once you have that format, then you can see, okay, this is all I have to do in the lesson. I'm not concerned with everything in the curriculum. I'm just concerned with this little chunk here today. And when you do that, you allow the possibility for all these other things to pop up. and you're like, oh wow, this student really gets it, but they're moving on and they're doing these other things. So you can be aware of that because your surrender value is met. That one thing that you wanted to accomplish in that lesson, that's met, and you're like, okay, this kid gets it, and this kid needs help with it, and this kid is practicing and they're consolidating this, and you can kind of get an idea of where your class is, because it frees you up to allow you to walk amongst your students and help them and coach them or conference with them throughout the lesson. So this is just one of the ways in which I would think about supporting new teachers. Figure out your format for the lesson, figure out how you're going to do some of these things, and those routines will be consistent throughout your lessons. And then from there, just kind of develop that platform as you go.